believe the recording is started. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our third session of the School Garden Leadership Trainings webinar series for the 2021 and 2022 school year. We're excited to welcome lots of returning garden champions from across the state of Florida. And this session today is titled Culinary Connections. And we'll be covering topics ranging from harvesting tips to kid-friendly recipes and culturally responsive cooking alongside some of our awesome guest speakers. My name is Tiffany Torres, and I'm the State School Garden Specialist with Florida Agriculture in the Classroom, and I'll be facilitating today. So we have a lot to dig into together, and let's get started. All right, and now that we know a little bit about you and you're talking to one another, we want to introduce you to the co-host of this webinar series. This series is hosted as in partnership between Florida Agriculture in the Classroom and the University of Florida IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program. And a little bit about us, Florida Agriculture in the Classroom is a statewide nonprofit organization that connects kids to healthy food and Florida agriculture through educational resources, teacher professional development, grants, and other farm to school programming. Florida Agriculture in the Classroom has a vision to ensure every student in pre-K through 12 education is aware of and appreciates agriculture and natural resources in Florida. And you can see some of our services here on the left and then our contact information on the right. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. And all of our services are provided for free to you by funding from the specialty license plate ag tag. And our second partner is the University of Florida IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program. UF-IFAS, or sometimes known as FNP, provides limited resource families in Florida access to more nutritious food choices on a budget so that they can adopt healthier eating and physical activity habits and reduce the risk of obesity and chronic disease. FNP has been providing this free nutrition education since 1996 in Florida, and it's all free, and they're currently serving in 40 counties. So when talking about school garden sustainability, we like to frame success in these three spheres. And we just wanted to remind you of this. Their gardening knowledge, leadership skills, and curriculum connections. The overall goal of this webinar series is to build gardening confidence among Florida school garden leaders of all levels, to foster collaboration among those leaders, and to strengthen garden programs for long-term success. So we're doing that by incorporating these three spheres into each of our sessions. And just a reminder that you can follow along which sphere we're talking about by looking in the upper right-hand corner of our slide deck, and you'll see these little icons. So today's agenda, what are we going to talk about today? We will be first diving into proper harvesting techniques and some food safety considerations when connecting to kids through what you're growing in the garden and then trying to eat it in culinary situations. We'll also talk about some healthy eating habits. We're going to give you some nutritious kid-friendly recipes. We'll have a live cooking demo featuring some of those recipes. And we'll also have a nutrition educator with us to talk about embracing diversity through culinary connections. And we're also going to highlight some nutrition education curricula that you can use on your own in real time. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Wilson, the Southwest Food System Specialist with UF-IFAS Extension Family Nutrition Program, and she's going to walk us through some helpful harvesting hints.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm really excited to talk about harvesting with you all today, and I'm excited because we have a special interactive game to do so. So we are going to use this online tool called Mentimeter. We used it before in our first session. So if you were there for that, you may be familiar. But it's an interactive tool. So you can go online to www.menti.com and type in this code that you see on your screen. All of this information will also be entered into the chat. And I'm going ahead and share my screen to go over to our Mentimeter presentation. So you'll also be able to see, the code here, the online website, and then you can also use the QR code if that's easier for you. Open it up on your phone, on another browser in your web page, whatever you think is best. But we're excited to play a little game together. And if you ever get booted off or if you have trouble locating the Mentimeter, you can also just on my Zoom screen, on the shared screen, the code to join this quiz will be at the top of every single slide. So you can always just refer to the top of that slide. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started talking about harvesting, give you some context, and then we'll jump into some of our quiz questions. So to start out, we'd like to share some harvest tips just generally. This applies to everything. It's really important to know your variety of the crops that you're growing and also label your plants. So as you know, this would start at the very beginning of the process. On that day that you plant, label your plants, think about the variety that you're growing, because for example, you're growing maybe these yellow peppers that you see here in the photo. And if you didn't know that it was a yellow pepper variety, you might be waiting forever and ever for them to turn red, and then you would miss your harvest window. So it's important to think about what are the signs and signals that your particular variety is ready for harvest, based on what you know about that crop, and pay attention to the days to harvest that you'll find on the seed packet generally, or even sometimes on that plant label if you're buying a transplant. And I would go ahead and mark that date on your calendar. So count out 50 days from the planting date, put it on your calendar. That way you can have a reference point for when to start looking at when your crops will be ready. It's not going to be exact. You might be earlier, a little bit later. It really does depend on your growing conditions, but this is a great idea to make sure you don't miss that harvest window, and you can also match it to your classroom timeline. So thinking about like, what are the activities that you have going on? When are your vacation days when you're not going to be in school, and make sure to plan around that. And really, we just want to encourage you to harvest your crops. This is the big takeaway message here. If it looks recognizable, go ahead and pick it. Don't be afraid to fail. You can always pick one, pull it out of the ground if it's a carrot, take it off of the bush. If it's a bean, test it. If it's not quite ripe, then leave the rest of them and move on. You can wait a bit longer, but you won't know if you don't try. And also, there's no harm in harvesting a bit earlier. This can also reduce pest damage. So if you're waiting until some of your crops are really, ripe or ready, then all of the other critters in the garden will also notice when that happens, and they will want to come and eat the crop. And if you don't pick it before them, then they'll get it, and that will be a sad day for all of you and your students. So please, it's okay to harvest earlier. If it's a little bit smaller, that's okay. At least you get to enjoy what you grew. And when thinking about harvesting, it's always important to think about food safety as well. So with food safety, you do want to be sure to wash your hands both before and after harvesting your crops, and use clean and sanitized tools, gloves, harvest containers, and work surfaces. You can sanitize these materials with a solution of diluted bleach or pure white vinegar, depending on your preferences. And really be aware of cross-contamination in the garden with your various tools. Have a set regimen schedule for cleaning everything that you use, and think about what those particular tools and even your hands have touched prior to touching these crops that you're harvesting. So if you're using a bucket to haul compost, don't use that same bucket to harvest your crops. That will introduce some contamination. Have some designated harvesting supplies to ensure food safety. And if you really want a deep dive into food safety and ensure that nobody gets sick from what you grow in your garden, I would recommend checking out the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services School Garden Food Safety Certification. This is intended for garden to cafeteria efforts. So if you want to serve the produce that you're growing in your garden in the school cafeteria, this will make sure that nobody gets sick from what you grow, that you're kind of above board, how to have a safe garden. And this certification involves an online web-based training. You can see a screenshot of one of the slides from that training here in the photo. And it also allows you to create a customized food safety plan, which is pretty amazing. It's all according to the specifics of what your garden is, how it's being used, to make sure that you are following all of those best practices for food safety. And technical assistance is available in person to answer any questions that you have and ensure that your food safety plan is going to work. And another great benefit is that $500 may be available for certified gardens through FDACS, which is a great benefit. So now we're going to jump into specific harvesting recommendations according to crop type. And that's where we're going to play our little game. So we'll have a quiz question according to each kind of crop category. So we're going to start first with leafy greens, and leafy greens, we have broadly included lettuces, all sorts of varieties of lettuce. Leafy brassicas. Brassicas are a very diverse plant family, generally, known as cruciferous vegetables. The leafy greens in the brassica family include kale, bok choy, collards, mustard, and there are lots more brassicas out there. And there are lots of other leafy greens like Swiss chard and spinach and others. So in terms of harvesting method, we recommend that you use cut and come again harvesting, which is our kind of catch-all term for continuous harvest of leafy greens. And there are two ways that you can do that. One is by the leaf. So you can kind of see in this picture, it's just gently snipping off or tearing off the largest outermost leaf of that plant. So it's just one leaf at a time. Whereas by the bunch is another continuous harvesting method. And that is when you actually cut off all of the leaves of that particular plant, but leave the crown intact. So the crown is the base of the plant where all of those leaves are kind of come together. So you don't want to remove the entire plant from the ground, then you couldn't harvest it again, but you, remove all of the leaves from that particular plant. You can kind of come in like a little lawnmower and remove all of kind of cut everything off of the plants, and the leaves will regrow from the crown. So you can come back and harvest a couple weeks later. I will note that you can't do the by the bunch method with brassicas. It's not going to work. You can only do the by the leaf method. And you can do by the bunch with lettuce and spinach and those sorts of crops. And of course, if you have a head lettuce, you'll want to wait until the head forms to just take it out of the ground all at one time, because if you harvest it by the leaf, you're not ever going to form a head. So now the moment has come for our first question, and you're already here. How exciting. You guys have all joined. You've created your avatars, I see. So because we have a sizable group, I'm going to press enter to start the countdown, and we're going to start this game. So I will note that the faster you answer, the more points you get. So I'm going to press enter, and we're going to start the countdown to have a question about leafy greens. And again, the faster you answer, the more points you get. So how do you know when lettuce has bolted? Is it when it tastes sweet with a small stem and is ball shaped, or when the lettuce tastes bitter with a tall stem and is cone shaped, or do you know it's bolted when the lettuce ran away? What do you think? So we'll have about 20 more seconds to enter your answers. And of course, like if you didn't get into Mentimeter just for this one, we'll have 3 more questions for you to join the fun. And I'm excited to see what you all think and if you got the questions right. Okay, time is up. And the correct answer is that the lettuce bolted when it tastes bitter and has a tall stem as cone shaped. So congratulations to the 16 of you who got that right. Let's see who's in the lead. It looks like we have Kara in the lead. Congratulations. And yeah, so what actually is bolting? Bolting is when the plant is preparing to flower and set seeds. So that's why you see it shoot up really tall, get that tall stem and kind of get cone shaped like we said. It's often heat induced, and the lettuce will get bitter. So you'll want to remove the plant from the ground after you see that the lettuce has bolted. You wouldn't want to continue harvesting that lettuce after that point. However, we will note that brassicas retain their quality. They don't become bitter after they bolt. So you can see that these mustard plants in the photo have really beautiful yellow flowers, and you can still enjoy them even after they've flowered, which is pretty fun. So yeah, but with lettuce plants, of course, you wouldn't be able to do the same. And because we've talked about the effect of temperature on harvesting our leafy greens or just general crops, we also wanted to mention frost and cold, because we are in the winter, and especially for our friends in North Florida, this is something to be aware of. So first of all, you want to plant cold hardy crops in order to avoid any issues with frost or freezes. And you can also protect your crops from frost by covering them with frost cloth, or kind of basically giving them a little blanket at night to retain that heat before it gets really cold in the morning, to prevent them from burning. But if you do have really frost sensitive or cold sensitive plants, like a tomato, for example, you're probably not going to be able to save it because it's just too sensitive, even with that cover. And a fun fact is that colder temperatures can result in sweeter vegetables in the case of collards, kale, and chard. So if you have a cold night, you could enjoy a sweeter leafy green. Now, our next category of question has to do with root crops. So let's see if you all are still on here. And we are going to start the countdown. Again, so root crops get better the longer you leave them in the ground. Is this true or false? Get better the longer that you leave them in the ground when thinking about root crops. Could be true, could be false. We have just over 10 seconds. So I hope you guys are getting your answers in, and very happy for your participation in this game. Hope you're having fun. Okay, 3 seconds and time is up. Oh, so many of you got the correct answer. Nice work. It is false. Who is in the lead now? Kara, oh, we got a new leader. Way to go. Let's see if you can keep it up. So yes, don't leave root crops in the ground for a long time. It is super important to pay attention to the days to harvest information to ensure optimal quality of your crop. You know, the longer that you leave it in the ground, if it's beyond that optimal date of the days to harvest, then the texture will probably start to get woodier, maybe really tough. It might even start to rot in the ground depending on your growing conditions, and the flavor won't be as nice. You know, it might lose some of that sweetness. And your pest issues will also increase. So you do want to harvest them on time. Now we'll move on to herbs. We have a nice herb question here for you. So we are going to get started with our question. Gotta be quick in order to gain the lead. So for annual herbs, how much of the plant can you harvest at one time? Is it 5 to 10%, 15 to 30%, or 50 to 75%? So just taking a little bit, taking a medium amount, or taking, you know, a good chunk of the plant for a one-time harvest. Okay, we have about 10 seconds left, so get in your answers. Okay, lots of you answered 15 to 30%, and that is incorrect. We can actually harvest even more, which is pretty amazing. Okay, I wonder who's in the lead. D Ware, still in the lead as the fastest answer. Congratulations. Okay, so with harvesting herbs, as we just mentioned, you can cut back 50 to 75% of annual herbs and they still recover, but with perennial herbs like rosemary, for example, it's only about a third. So you don't want to take quite as much of your perennial herbs at one time. And it's important to use pruners or a knife to make clean cuts instead of ripping it off with your hands. That might damage the plant and not make it quite as easy to regrow. And do keep in mind that if you remove the flowers from your herb plants, that will cause continued leaf production, which is really great. So, you know, when thinking about maybe cilantro or dill that you might want to grow for the leaf and or the seed, you'll just want to keep that in mind. So if you're trying to get some coriander seeds, then you would leave the flowers on the plant, let them develop into seeds. But if you only want it to produce leaves, remove the flowers so that it will keep making leaves for you. And we have just one more question to bring it all together. This is for the big win to see who's the champion of this game, gets all the bragging rights of the School Garden Leadership Training. Select the crop that does not produce a higher yield the more that it is harvested. So would that be beans, cucumbers, sweet potatoes, kale, eggplant, or basil? I will say them again. Beans, cucumbers, sweet potatoes, kale, eggplant, or basil. Again, this is the one that's not going to produce more and more that you harvest it. 10 more seconds. Okay, what are your answers? Congratulations to 14 of you. You got it right. Way to go. Of course, if you remove sweet potatoes from the ground, they're not going to produce anymore. So that's the answer. And let's see who our big winner is. Mindy, congratulations, Mindy. Way to go. You get the bragging rights for this session. So yes, please don't be shy about harvesting your crops. It's important to set a regular harvest schedule and be consistent to kind of stay on top of your production. And because harvesting crops, some of the vegetables like herbs and beans and fruiting vegetables like eggplants or tomatoes will induce greater production, then it's important to stay on top of it. So that is all I have, and congratulations to Mindy and all of you for playing this game together. I hope you had fun.
Thanks so much, Kelly. That was a lot of fun. We're going to switch back over to our PowerPoint real quick. All right. Hope everyone can see that correctly. Shout out if you can't. And our next speaker is going to be Chef Paula Kendrick from the Division of Food, Nutrition, and Wellness at Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. We're really excited to have Chef Paula with us today to talk about culinary connections and cooking and eating from the school garden, and to do a live cooking demo. So I will hand it over to Paula.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiffany. I'm delighted to be here. As Tiffany mentioned, I'm with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I am a state chef, and I do a lot of fun things, teaching kids to be good tasters and having fun tastings with them. And I think it's so important to teach kids how to be good tasters. So I had the pleasure of being able to create a video that did just that, which we are going to show to you now. Yes.
Good. All right.
Hi, I'm Chef Paula Kendrick, and today we're going to talk about teaching kids to be good tasters. Tasting is done with more than our taste buds. Taste is actually the fusion of a food's taste, smell, and touch into one single sensation. But before we even put it in our mouth, it starts with our eyes. What we see sets the tone as to what we will expect. Taste really combines all the senses. It's important that we remember this in order to create a good dining experience. The dining experience is the totality of sights, smells, sounds, tastes, and even social atmosphere. How can we create that? Though we are in challenging times, it is important that we interact in a positive manner, no matter what we are doing. Even with a mask, a child can sense a smile. Remember, attitudes are contagious, and trying new foods can be scary. So we need to create a safe environment for kids to try new things. It's important that we teach them to be good tasters, and that we ourselves are good tasters. First, we want to start with an open mind. Even if we've tried it before or we think we don't like it, it's okay, but we want to have an open mind. Second, we don't have to like it. It's okay not to like something, but we want to use positive, descriptive words to talk about what we've tasted. And we want to encourage our students to do the same. And third, we don't want to yuck someone else's yum, and we don't want our students to either. So it's really important that we teach that to our kids and that we do the same. So remember to be a good taster. Mmm, peppery, with a hint of sweetness at the end. Delicious.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiffany, for showing that. So as you can tell, I work a lot also with cafeteria staff. I'm fortunate to be able to work with them and teach them how to teach kids to be good tasters. So I get to do it all the way through the school system, and I'm so grateful. One of the things I really like to do also is work with some of our garden educators, teaching them how to create easy recipes in the classroom. So that they can easily take that garden produce, do something fun with it in the classroom, and then have a tasting with both the raw and the prepared items. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to talk a little bit about making a kale salad with a citrus vinaigrette, because we are getting into our season of kale and citrus. I think it's also important that as we are gardening, we teach our kids how to understand seasonality and where our food comes from. We're very fortunate here in Florida. We have over 47,000 farms in the state. Tourism and agriculture are our two top industries. And so our growing season, as you can see, is actually the same as our school year. So that is our commercial growing season. So it's important to teach them, I talk to them about, like, look at those summer months. Why do we think we don't have as much produce growing in the summer? So all of that stuff is really important. So this is a really good recipe. This is a kale salad recipe. I've got a bunch of kale here, but you can use whatever kind of kale or hardy greens you want to use. And I put it in a bowl for the purposes of this, but in a classroom, especially with younger kids, sometimes I might put it in a plastic baggie so that we can pass it around the room once we've dressed the kale, so that they can all play a role in massaging that dressing into the kale. I'm not going to do that here, but I am going to go ahead and start with the citrus vinaigrette. So I am starting with a half a cup of this is fresh tangerine juice. The recipe is actually for satsuma juice, but you can use whatever citrus you have available, whatever's easy for you to get, easy orange juice, whatever. I'm a big fan of these jars, and if you can get them with the measurements on them, that makes it even easier. So this recipe calls for a half a cup of citrus juice. We also are going to add a clove of garlic. One of my favorite things, especially in the classroom, are these garlic presses. They're super easy. The kids can do all of that, which is so much fun for them. We're going to add some lemon juice. Always keep your citrus at room temperature to get the most juice out of it. Roll it along the cutting board. If you're going to zest, if your recipe calls for both the zest and the juice, you'll want to zest it first. So it's so much easier to zest it when it's whole. And then you cut it in half. I have my little trusty juicer here, which is also so much fun for the kids to help out with. This recipe calls for, let's see, a tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, which we'll add at the end. We've got our clove of garlic. So let me see here. I think that's about a tablespoon. Yep. Tablespoon of lemon juice, couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, actually 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of Florida honey, also a good conversation to talk about our honey and the benefits of our local honey. Looking for that local honey when these kids are at the farmer's market and at the grocery store. I know my grocery stores have gotten really good about highlighting local honey. So and then we're going to add 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, little salt and pepper to taste. And then the beauty again of the ball jar, you are able to then pass this around the classroom, let the kids all participate in making this salad dressing. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to put this on our kale. And again, if it's in the baggie, the kids could all pass it around. If you wanted to have the kids do it, take turns just tossing it. spatula as well. The beauty of kale is it really soaks up the dressing. It needs that dressing. It's very fibrous, so it's much better to have all of that dressing sort of massaged into it. It can even sit there for a while. This salad, if I've had it in the baggie and say, you know, it's been in the refrigerator for a couple of days, it's also still delicious. So then what you're going to do is once you have made your salad, and of course you're in the classroom, we're going to put it in our little cute little tasting bowls. And then for this particular salad, I like to garnish it. Remember, we do eat with our eyes. So I garnish it with some citrus, other seasonal berries. If you've got blackberries, I've got some kiwi here. You know, strawberries, when they're in season, the kids love strawberries. I try to make it colorful so that kids, again, we eat with our eyes. And I try to find so that the kids have some things, you know, like I've got some crunchy here. I'm putting some sunflower seeds. Hopefully you don't have any seed allergies. But if you do, then don't use seeds, use some other crunchy, maybe some croutons or something like that. Just to give it a little bit of crunch, also soaks up some of that juice. And then you pass that around. And of course, then you're going to talk to your kids about what they're really tasting. You know, it's really important that we encourage them to talk about what they're really tasting. Another one of the recipes that I want to highlight today, I'm not going to make it right in front of you, but it's called Besto Pesto. This is a recipe that came from the Florida Ag in the Classroom recipe contest. I have participated in with them for the past 2 years, 2019 and 2020. There are 2 amazing recipe books, which Tiffany will show you how to access all of those. But we also have one, our Harvest of the Month. I found both of mine. So they're very easy. This one, the Ag in Classroom, you even can look up easily online. And so you can ours as well. We just put that on our website. So both of them are online and they're easy classroom recipe ideas. So this one, the Besto Pesto, came from a middle school. And basically this takes 4 cups of fresh herbs, 2 cups of basil, 2 cups of flat leaf parsley, but you can use whatever combination of herbs you want to do. And certainly don't forget about your radish tops, your arugula, your other tops and things like that are all great things to use to make arugula. A little Parmesan cheese, a little lemon. This has zest and the juice. Garlic. This recipe they created it with almonds, but if you didn't want to use almonds, you could easily use garbanzo beans. Garbanzo beans also add that creaminess. You don't have to worry about the nut allergies. And also the liquid in the garbanzo beans, it's called aquafaba. That also is a great thing to use to help with your the liquid in your, sometimes you need more liquid in your pesto. If you don't want to put a bunch of olive oil, you can just use this, and that way you're not wasting it. So all of this makes this wonderful, wonderful Besto Pesto. This also has some Florida honey in it, a little salt and pepper to taste, and it lasts. So that is, this one recipe makes almost 16 ounces. It is delicious. It lasts for a long time. I highly recommend on the recipe, they actually take it and add it, put it on a piece of crostini, garnish it with some of the tomatoes that they grew in their garden, and it makes a really fun little hors d'oeuvre. So much fun. I'm going to say as well, if you're gonna purchase one classroom thing, purchase a blender and make sure you get one with a big top with the measurements on it. So a lot of our recipes in our Harvest of the Month recipe guide are geared towards like 2-ounce tastings, so that you can see here how many ounces one thing will make. These are great. The blender, we're making a pesto in it, but you can also make salsas, hummuses, dips, ranch dip with yogurt, fresh herbs, so many cool things that you can make, smoothies that you can make with your blender. So on that, I think I'm kind of wrapping it up. I'm worried about the time. How are we on time, guys? Good. Okay, awesome. So here are the links to our nutritious, kid-friendly recipes, our Florida Harvest of the Month. We've got a link for signing up. We also have some videos that I've created on my webpage, which is that link. but also there is the Science Behind Cooking, which is geared towards middle schoolers, which are 6 videos, 6 minutes or so long, that are great for middle schoolers, but all kids. It was kind of really fun. Talked about cooking and the science behind it. We made scrambled eggs and a blender salsa. And then of course the recipe books that we have in front of you. So now back to our PowerPoint. Oh, cool. Yeah. And then we're going to talk about also what I do. Before we go back to our PowerPoint, I do, as you know, garden to cafeteria trainings, tastings, assist with garden recipes, do events with students teaching about Florida produce, seasonality, and agriculture, and of course, hands-on cafeteria trainings for school food service. And now back to our PowerPoint.
Thanks, Paula. That was a really informative presentation. I really hope that all of you fill out that form that we linked to and request Paula to come work with you in your classrooms. It is a lot of fun. We've been partnering for years and it's awesome. All right. And so next, I'm just going to go a little deeper into that school garden recipe contest that Paula shared about. So the goal of this recipe contest is to expose students to growing their own produce and encourage healthy eating habits. So students and teachers really work together to create these recipes that are then combined into one book, like she showed on screen. At least one ingredient must be grown in the garden. So really, you don't have to grow a lot of food. It's just to get them thinking about how what we grow in the garden, we can also transform into things that are nutritious and healthy for us to eat. And the 4 categories are appetizer or snack, salad or side, entree or soup, and baked goods. So recipes can be created in teams of 3 to 5 students, or as an individual student if you have someone who's really ambitious, or as a full class if you'd like to do that. And each school can submit up to 3 recipes. There are prizes, so we encourage you to apply. And in addition, you'll get recognition in the book. And to register, you can go to the link in the chat box on the Florida Agriculture in the Classroom website. And you need to make sure that you submit anything that you are wanting to put in the contest by March 1st, 2022. So we look forward to seeing what you come up with. And I also wanted to highlight some of Florida Agriculture in the Classroom's most recent resources that we've created. These are our new Rainbow of Nutrition planting guides. So they are meant to be used in conjunction with planting a school garden, but they're kind of more of a visual guide. You can see that first one on the left is a wheel. This might not work very well with my virtual background, but the wheel does spin around like this. And it's meant more for kindergartens or 2nd grade because it uses pictures and icons to kind of describe what each food does for your body, the different nutrients included in the Rainbow of Nutrition, and then also how some considerations when you're planting those in the school garden. So things like days to harvest and growing zones and things of that nature. And then the one on the right is more of, we like to call it like a paint chip guide, kind of like a paint chips that you would sort through at Lowe's or Home Depot. But this goes through a variety of fruits and vegetables, all that are grown in the state of Florida. And it has a lot more detail and language on it about the nutrition facts of each fruit or vegetable, as well as some helpful hints for planting and other planting information like seed depth, spacing, sun, all of that. So you can order those using the link in the chat box on our website. They are meant to be a classroom set. We don't have enough to give out to each student, but they are free for your classroom. So please go ahead and start ordering today. And in addition to our nutrition-based planting guides, we wanted to encourage you to explore all of the amazing garden-based nutrition curriculum out there. These are just a few that use the garden as a tool for teaching about health and wellness, nutrition, and different culinary connections. For a more comprehensive list, you can also take a look at the document that's linked in the chat box from the Family Nutrition Program. They have a whole one-pager on different nutrition education curricula that's pretty awesome. But just to go over these, so we have Grow It, Try It, Like It, which is a preschool curriculum, and it walks you through, I believe, 6 different fruits or vegetables and it comprehensively goes into detail about those. Then we have the Junior Master Gardener program, Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go. That one is a paid curriculum, so you do have to order that. I believe it's $65, somewhere around there. And then we have the Great Garden Detective, which is grades 3 through 4, and that is a USDA curriculum, as well as Dig In, which is also a USDA curriculum, grades 5 through 6. So, you know, take a look at what's out there. There's so much for nutrition education and garden and culinary connections, but these are just a few of the ones that we use extensively throughout the state of Florida. And speaking of garden and nutrition education, our next speaker is Cielo Schneider. She's a nutrition educator from Lee County with the UF-ITIS Extension Family Nutrition Program. And I just want to flag before Cielo starts to share her experience that FNP does, again, work in many counties throughout the state. So if you're interested in receiving free nutrition education in your school or your classroom, you can go ahead and check out the link in the chat box to get in touch with FNP today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Cielo.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. As you said, my name is Cielo Schneider, and I'm a nutrition educator here in Lee County, and I'm with the UF-IFAS Extension, the Family Nutrition Program. And as mentioned before, we do teach families to eat healthy on a budget and be physical active. And our curricula for youth, our youth curricula offers education from K all the way to high school. And also we have a curriculum that is for adults. So I feel that the way that I wanna kind of have the presentation based on how I prepare, and especially when it comes to the youth. So let's see, okay, yeah. The first thing that I do, obviously, I need to know my audience, find out their background, address questions such as the culture, special celebrations, if they do cook at home with parents, how much they are involved in the cooking, what are the favorite foods at home, find out what's relevant. I mean, that is the key. And once I start getting to know the kids, that gives me a lot to base my lesson from that moment on. That emotional part of it, just like I know that if I can connect with them from the beginning, I know that there's going to be easier for them to remember and learn what we are teaching. So from that, once I have the audience and once I understand what they want and what they need, I go to identify deeper into describing, once I get to describe what we do for what we teach and for our health, I get to talk about chronic diseases. And it's funny because that always works. When I start asking and we start talking about, what we know, and obviously, they are going to be talking about, oh, my grandfather is diagnosed with diabetes. My mom has, high blood pressure. And all these things, again, it gives me more ideas on how I can connect with them and tie the emotional factors and all these little things to the lessons that I am going to be presenting to them. For instance, there is a site that I do, it's a middle schoolers, and I remember one of the participants that she mentioned about her dad being diagnosed with diabetes. And suddenly she just became very, very interested in cinnamon, because then I will explain to her, people that wanted to kind of lower the sugar intake, they might use cinnamon, and that's how I was able to get into, get them interested, or maybe herbs that, like the rosemary, the mint, all these little things that are also will give me ideas on the recipes, what I can, how we can incorporate everything that we learn. But it has to, I do believe that it has to mean something, it has to be relevant, and they need to care. So besides that, another strategy that I do use, especially around that time in their lives, where there's so many things that are changing, I go like, beauty, there are many beauty products that are based on, they use cucumber, they use rosemary, they use chamomile. And I know this is a fact, just because when in the Hispanic culture, we try to use everything from scratch. So at home, even my daughter, what does she use for her face? Facials, she does cucumber. And that, entices them to learn how to grow the cucumbers, or chamomile for their hair, or honey for again facial. So all these little things that we can use as how we can motivate them, how can we connect with them, and from that point on, they open up, and it's easier to start planting. It's easier and better for them because they will have the tendency to take care of what they have planned because it means something for them. So also for adults, which it's or adults and youth as well. Another thing that I know when it comes to the Hispanic population is that we do use more of the beans, the dry beans, rather than the canned. So that gives me a huge opportunity when we start talking about the special celebrations, because usually what we do is that, you go to Christmas or you go to a get together, most likely you're always going to have black beans and rice. So, those little things I know, and I can relate, and I can connect the emotional part of it with what we do in the classroom. And I don't know if we do have the pictures. Right, okay, yeah, so that is to the left, that is the youth center, the Bonita Springs Center. I do teach their kids from elementary school and middle schoolers as well. So we try to make it fun, and they can paint, as you see, that raised beds. We just, when we do the the activities from the curriculum, we just go outside. We again looked at how the plants are growing, and on the right, you will see what we did. I did today a class with adults, and there are planting tomatoes on the first, I believe that the first two rows, and then the last one we have cilantro, which is we use a lot for our recipes. Do we have any more pictures, Tiffany? All right, so right there, and it's easy for me with the adults because we have more pictures with adults, but it's pretty much what we do with the kids. We just like that, have an introduction of the benefits of what we're going to be planting, and we also have the action of planting, and we do have a recipe. So that's pretty much, those are the little 3 things that I myself always try to, and it's in the curriculum, in the curriculum. But that is very important. And once they start tasting and they start remembering and they start interacting with you, it makes it really, it makes it very different for them to have and remember, as I said before. So, we'll start with an icebreaker, like a little taste of, like for instance, today we have tomatoes. So we have a bruschetta and we have 3 different tomatoes. And that's exactly what I do with the kids. And then after that, we talk about the benefits. And after that, we just went to the kitchen and we just did a recipe. So I don't know how I'm doing in time. Alrighty. I think that, so that's how I prepare with, for the classes that we do, especially with the Hispanic population that we have in Bonita Springs. Tiffany?
Yes, thank you so much. That was amazing to hear about how you plan your lessons. And I hope some of you out there found that inspirational as you're taking into account how to really integrate the many various cultural identities that are present amongst your students and your school population into your school gardening experience and into the food that you eat from the school garden. And so next we're gonna go through a couple of garden spotlights just to wrap up our time together and really share with you some examples from across the state of how their garden harvests are shared and how that might help play off of those different cultural identities that we're talking about. So, and just so you know, here's the map of a couple of different places that we're gonna spotlight. And if you don't see yourself represented on the map, feel free to reach out to us because we're gonna keep doing spotlights and we wanna keep moving around the state to highlight the awesome work that's happening. All right, so our first spotlight is W.R. Toller K-8 school. This is in Liberty County, Florida. And this model, this is like, I wanted to orient you in a scaled up approach. So this is just one classroom doing some work together. So it's cooking in the classroom, pretty straightforward, single 3rd grade class. And their goal was to grow some salad greens in the garden and then harvest those together for a nutritious focused 15-minute lesson. So they did have FNP at their school do a 15-minute lesson. Then they ate the salad together. You can see it's really beautiful. And actually, this is the same recipe that Chef Paula showed us live today with the Satsuma. So it's kind of cool to see it all plated up. And we were able to give students some samples of some Satsuma juice. That's what you see focused there as well. So students are able to learn about Florida agriculture by sampling other products and have a fun time eating from the garden. And our next spotlight is Chairs Elementary School. So this is scaled up even a little further. This is a 4-H garden club, so it encompasses students from many different grades throughout the school. And it's an after-school meal approach. So the students grew their garden in order to have a family-style sit-down meal together. And they really loved their 4-H garden volunteers. And they decided at the end of the school year, they wanted to have a family-style meal where they cook for the adults. So you can see here, they're harvesting some of the things that they grew together, and then they're sitting down and eating with all of the other volunteers that helped make the garden club possible throughout the semester. And next we have L.A. Anger Middle School. This is in Charlotte County, Florida, and this is middle ECE life skills garden class that connected to a culinary class at the middle school. So basically, they wanted their students to try fresh vegetables grown from the garden in a culinary dish, and at the same time teach some life skills to that ESE student population by following recipes. They wanted to connect with other students in the process of doing that, so they worked with the culinary class, and they wanted to try something new. So you can see here, they grew all of these beautiful eggplants in their garden, and then they worked with the culinary class to make them into an eggplant parmesan. They're breading it up right there. And then I think they paired it with some spaghetti noodles and some sauce, and they were able to have a nice meal together. And I think the teacher who was in charge of this is also present and might be able to share some more in the Q&A.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. We look forward to hearing from you later. And we also have Carr Elementary and Middle School in Calhoun County, Florida. And this was an example of a taste test with a guest chef, it was Chef Paula Kendrick, and some farmers. And so again, scaling up a little further, this was an experience that incorporated multiple classes that cycled through the event throughout the day. And this was a salad day event, so we marketed ahead of time and let the whole school know and really built it up. And we planted these garden greens, different types of lettuce in the garden ahead of time. Students in the morning, the older students went outside and they harvested, and then they sent them inside in this bin to the culinary school food service director, and they were able to wash it, get everything sanitary. Then we integrated it into the same recipe that we featured today, and we're able to make the vinaigrette together outside and then add it to our greens, supplemented with some other greens that the school purchased. We had a Satsuma farmer come out, and you can see him there talking to some of the students about how you trim the trees, how you care for them, the different ways that we grow citrus in Florida. And again, this just reinforces that tie to Florida agriculture, while also celebrating the school garden as a whole and giving every student a taste of something small that they grew. And it's a great gateway into garden to cafeteria connections as well, because it's building those relationships with the school food service staff at a way and at a scale that's really manageable. And then lastly, we have Littleton Elementary School in Lee County, Florida, who I believe is also here with us today. And this is an example of a garden to cafeteria program, so scaled all the way up. They're going through the necessary precautions to make sure that the food that they grow in the school garden is handled safely and produced safely, and then sending some of that food into the school cafeteria. So the story that they like to share from their school is that they grew a lot of tomatoes that they added to the school lunch line and into a salad. You can see the salads in the upper right-hand corner there. And ahead of time, they made sure to make announcements on the school cafeteria intercom that, you know, today we'll be trying tomatoes that we grew in our own school garden. Everybody got so excited that they got their salads and immediately ate all of the tomatoes. Some of them didn't even make it to their seats without eating the tomatoes. and then hopefully ate the rest of the salad, but they definitely ate the tomatoes first. So again, that's a great garden to cafeteria connection and a great way to encourage school pride of the school garden. And then I just wanted to say that, you know, there are many other ways that you can share your harvest from your school garden. Backpack feeding programs are another one that's kind of extensive. This is a picture from Indiana Elkhart School District. So they repackage some of their national school lunch program meals into meals that they can send home with the students after school in the backpack. And I know that a lot of schools who have programs that are more robust like this will also try to supplement some of that food being sent home to students after school with garden produce from the school garden. So that's just another activity or avenue to think about. And I would love to hear, you know, what else you all are doing with your school garden produce. So we encourage you to stick around and share your story with us during the Q&A session, which is coming up next. And just to wrap us up before we dive into that, today, I hope you learned some things about harvesting. The takeaways there is really know your variety and your days to harvest, and don't be afraid to pick. As Kelly said, if it looks tasty, if it looks edible, go ahead and harvest it before the bugs get it or before it rots. And we also want to encourage you to just cook and eat from the garden as much as you can. Use simple, versatile recipes. We gave you a lot of links today, but we're also happy to help at one-on-one. And use the garden to reflect student and school cultural identities, as Cielo talked about in her approach to planning, really making that emotional connection using relevant props, recipes, and shared meals. And last but not least, always involve your students. You'd be surprised at how much they can do in terms of cooking. Try new things and definitely have fun with it. And so please stick around if you can for our optional Q&A session with our presenters, as well as some of the spotlight features. And before we transition, I want to make sure that you take a moment to go ahead and fill out our session feedback survey, which should be linked in the chat box now. Our professional development survey if you are requesting CEUs. And you can always be sure to join our Facebook group if you haven't already. The password is Cuban Cilantro. And we also have our shared Google Drive folder with many of the resources linked here today. Our next session will be Thursday, December 2nd from 3 to 5 p.m. And that's maintenance meetup. We'll be discussing pest and disease management, seasonal garden upkeep, and cultivating community partnerships. So thank you to all our guest presenters and everyone for being here today. And we can go ahead and move into our Q&A session. And that will be facilitated by Emily.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us if you're staying on for the Q&A session. So a lot of really great information today. I know there was a lot dropped into the chat box. So if you're feeling like, whoa, got a lot, it will come back to you afterwards as well. So one of the questions that I just saw popped into the chat is about how to do the garden to cafeteria. This is specifically thinking in Broward County, but I think it's a great question just overall of what that process looks like. Does anyone want to speak to this or share maybe some experience that you've had?
I don't mind sharing. I'm the one who asked the question. We've had a garden for several years, and I've approached the cafeteria manager, on several occasions because we have an abundance of cherry tomatoes and kale, and unfortunately, from what she's told, she's not allowed to serve it.
So I can speak to that for a little bit. It is really, there is nothing against the law that says you cannot serve garden produce. However, it is definitely, you have to get it approved by your school district, your school, because sometimes there can be some trepidation based on harvesting techniques and kids harvesting, et cetera, and food safety. However, there are many successful garden to cafeteria,
Yes.
garden to cafeteria all throughout the state. Alachua County is one that comes to mind specifically, but it can be done. So I don't know specifically with Broward County. I think there might be some schools that are already doing it in Broward, but I don't know for sure. But it really depends on the school. Keep trying, keep asking, keep.
Yeah, I will
asking.
keep asking, but I mean, if there's a model that I could replicate or present, that would be helpful. So I wouldn't mind presenting it to the school district.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we've got some folks who jumped right in to want to share a little bit. So Jeannie, if you would like to share, and then Kelly.
Yeah, so I actually I am the state coordinator for the food systems team, and I just wanted to lend you some information that I know about, which is I actually lived and worked in Miami-Dade for 20 years. They actually have a policy for farm to cafeteria that I could provide to you. But one of the things I looked at while you were talking was to look at your own Broward wellness policy. And actually it's the policy is 5314. And it does say in here under D, so it's health and nutrition education. It says the school cafeteria serves as a learning lab. And then it says incorporating nutrition promotions and food from school gardens to enhance the experience. So maybe it's just a matter of kind of like educating about the wellness policy, because you actually, that was the first step in Miami, was getting it into the wellness policy. And I know a few years ago, it wasn't in the wellness policy for Broward, but now it is. So I said, if it's okay, I'm just going to drop the link to your wellness policy in the chat here.
Thank you. I was just looking it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeannie. Kelly, I
Thank
know
you.
you had your hand raised as well. Did you want to pipe in with any info?
Yes, I did. I wanted to call attention again to the FDAX School Garden Food Safety Certification that I mentioned during my presentation. How you mentioned kind of presenting it, continuing to ask the question of your food service leadership. That is a large purpose of the school garden certification. That way you can say, we have done our due diligence, we've been trained on food safety, we have a food safety plan. There, like Chef Paula said, there's nothing illegal about this. This is all within the purview of the law, and we are taking care to make sure that it's safe. So I would definitely recommend getting certified and presenting that option to your cafeteria manager, who then could put that up the chain, because I think what I found too is that there may sometimes not be consistent communication between different levels of the organization, between the food service director, who might be totally okay with garden to cafeteria, but then the cafeteria manager on that level might be very nervous to have some produce served in the cafeteria. So having kind of making sure that everyone is on the same page and finding out what some of those roadblocks are, like asking the question, why don't you want me to do that? And if it's an issue of food safety, hopefully the school garden certification will be able to take care of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because I know there's excuse me, a lot of other folks that have that on their mind as well. Tiffany, I saw your hand up too. Did you want to add a little bit?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Kelly was saying and suggest that is kind of the first step in some ways to do the school garden food safety certification program. Again, it's not required, but it will help walk you through all of the steps needed in order to do garden to cafeteria in a safe way. And in addition to that, more so, I think it opens the door to conversations with school food service staff at your school. So usually the schools that are participating in that program, it's the garden champion or the localized garden leader that's doing it, but sometimes it's also the school food service staff that's going through training, and sometimes it's a team of people. Ideally, it would be a team of people. And then I also just wanted to highlight too that we work closely with the Department of Agriculture to help implement that program, and I'm happy to come to any schools and help walk you through those steps. So you'll also get localized, like in-person service if you're interested in that. And I think we're going to do a garden to cafeteria webinar separate from school garden leadership training, because it seems like every month this comes up and it's such a popular topic. So keep an eye out for that. We'll probably do that in the spring.
I think that would be great, Tiffany. I think I would like to learn more as well myself. So, Carlita, I had seen your hand up. Did you want to share as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jacqueline if she doesn't mind sharing her contact information, because I'm the food systems specialist for Broward County. I work a lot with the schools and the wellness committee for the school district. So if you can share your contact info. I will be happy to reach out to you, because that's something that I would also love to see in Broward County.
Yes, I will. You want me to just put it in the chat, or do you
Sure.
want me to
Yeah,
send it to you?
the chat
Okay.
will be fine. Mhm.
Okay, I'll send it to you, Kurt. And I just want to say my school manager is wonderful and my district is phenomenal and they're so open to
Yeah.
everything. I just wanted to find out, if there is something out there, which now I'll look at the wellness policy, that I could just share that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You're in very good hands. Carlita is fantastic and has a lot of great connections to bridge any gaps. And the FDAC School Garden certificate is also, I just popped it into the chat as well. So if you wanted to take a look at that or just have that on hand, you've got that as well. So a lot of really good insight around kind of garden to cafeteria questions. And I think we'll jump into that more this spring. We've got another question. This is kind of transitioning a little bit about any suggestions on hydroponic farming in classrooms for schools who may not have land space. And anyone who's got some information, feel free to jump in. So Selena just popped into the chat one of our training sessions from this last year about hydroponics. So we've got a YouTube channel from our previous session last year that you can check out about that. So hopefully that answers maybe a little bit of your questions. I know hydroponics, you can get really deep into it. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I guess I would just say there's a ton of different models out there. So it depends on I would say first look at your budget. And if you don't have a budget, apply for a grant. But you can start really small with hydroponics and even do like an aero garden unit. And that's just like a tabletop unit, but you're able to grow lettuce continually and at least do taste tests in the classroom. So yeah, I guess it would depend on what size and scale you're going for.
Yeah, thanks, Tiffany. I think maybe the YouTube from our session last year is a great place to start, and then you've got a whole bunch of people on here you can reach out to kind of help guide you for some more information as well. So just a question for those of you, because we've got a nice group of people who are still here. What crops have you all harvested, and what tips do you have for kid-friendly harvesting in the school garden? So what have you done that might be helpful to share for the group to hear?
I can mention if you want. We've had a lot of success with all different varieties of the cherry tomatoes, and we have them growing really tall, so the kids love walking through and harvesting those. And kale always does really well, and kohlrabi we've had success with. Beans and we're always fighting with the iguanas though, with our peppers and stuff. But yeah, basically those are our real successful ones.
Yeah, I think a lot of that makes sense. Beans are great too because they're got that nice crunch. They can be easy to pick. Cherry tomatoes have their own challenges for pests and things, but are really nice bite size, for tasting. So, and I also see Adrian had put into the chat how herbs are also really a great place to start as well for adding things in, that are kid friendly. So thank you. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else have crops that you've harvested that Jacqueline didn't get a chance to mention that have done well in your school garden, or maybe even ones that you'd like to try? Oh, sweet potatoes. Nice. Thanks, Carlita. Yeah, definitely. And sweet potatoes are really fun because you can grow them in a barrel, you know. So if you've got tight on space, there's some creative ways to grow them or use them as a cover crop. And they're definitely really fun to dig for. And there's almost always one that doesn't that gets left behind, and then you've got sweet potatoes for maybe another season as well. So in what ways have you connected your gardens, your recipes, or tasting celebrations with cultural identities of your students and your school community? So thinking how you're bridging the cultural connections of probably a lot of diverse schools and students, and bridging that with your garden, or maybe with your recipes, or even tasting celebrations.
I think one of the things that you can do with the students is actually ask them for what they would like to see growing. Because maybe they have an idea, or maybe something, they eat something at home that, like in Miami, there's a lot of, wanting to grow boniato and like pigeon peas and just different types of crops than like, the normal like basil, tomato. And so that's where personally, that's where I would start, is, asking the kids for what their preferences are and incorporating that into your garden planning.
Jeannie, I agree with you because one of the most popular, you know, that we grow in our garden, it's beans and cilantro. Those are the two things that we do the most, because it seems that it can, the kids will have something to talk to the parents about. And especially when I do this in the after school program, the parents are the ones that are picking them up, so they get to see how the garden is doing. And there is something that connect them with the parents. So definitely, just find out what they do at home, and what they, and then again, for depending on their cultural background, you can really base on what you're going to be choosing to plant on the school garden.
Yeah, thanks, Cielo. You make a great point, and was just making me think of, I was gifted yucca and sugarcane from a previous coworker. The yucca was from their family, so I planted that, and then the sugarcane was from a Haitian coworker of mine, and I was like, just gave it a try. I had never grown either before, so I always encourage, even if it's outside your comfort zone, go for it. It doesn't hurt to try. And if it doesn't go well, it's just a great learning opportunity. Almost every season, even if I've grown it before, I somehow managed to have some kind of a challenge or something new or something to learn. And so I ended up not harvesting the sugarcane, because it's quite a workout to really actually access the sugar itself, but it was really fun to grow it. And I encourage those kind of tall plants like yucca and sugarcane are really great along a fence. And so that's what I did to use like extra spacing, is I put that along my fence. So then I had kind of following a permaculture sort of thinking, is using the edges, right? And using the sides. So great place to put pineapples, things like that, where, you might not use that space. And so growing it, right? So I see a couple of things in the chat box here. From Adrian was mentioning studying, food origins, which I think is a great topic, and also really educational as well. And so Adrian was mentioning that at a workshop called Chicken to Chicken Nugget, and adapted it with students, breaking down the origin of their favorite meal for Thanksgiving. So that's very cool. So going through that whole process from start kind of to plate. So yes, if you do happen to have a picture of that, Adrian would love to share it on our Facebook group, or just share it with our group would be great. So yeah, so great. Yeah, I think we'd love to see that. How could you partner with your cafeteria to showcase your harvest? So this is kind of circling back to that question about kind of garden to cafeteria. And so we had some really great examples of everything from a smaller classroom to kind of a larger school setting. What are some of your dreams, if you all haven't had the chance to do that, of what that might look like for you? Well, you can dream without sharing. That is all good. I know we are at the end of a day, of almost the end of a week. So I'll let us kind of maybe use that time to wrap up. But Mindy was sharing that we have a school that creates a stone soup. Mindy, you know I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you mean by creating a stone soup?
That's, I think they do, it's Inglewood Elementary. And so I think they normally partner and have someone come in that helps with creating that, but they do it every year. And it's just to kind of, I think one of the reasons they do it is it's got some versatility to how they want to use, the harvest, and they tell the story. Let me make sure I'm telling it right. Yeah. They plant with the intent to celebrate the stone soup planting. And then, so that's essentially that, but they partner and because there's folks that do things for like the farmers market and stuff nearby. And so like local community kind of helps partner and bring it together and everything like that. And pretty much all the kids participate in the garden. So it's great to have those champions out there. And I know they're fond of you as well.
Oh, thanks, Mindy. I didn't know Inglewood does that. So that's really cool. We can chat offline more about that because that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I know they did something with the hydroponic tower when there was construction, and it sounded like they were pleased, but I don't know enough of like which one they tried and the setting to make them feel happy about it. So I would agree with what you said earlier of starting with that other video on hydroponic because it's such an interesting topic.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thanks, Mindy. Jeannie, I saw your hand raised if you wanted to jump in with your 2 cents.
Well,
Or 5 cents.
Well, I guess I could do 5 cents. I just wanted to reiterate a point that Chef Paula made earlier, which is if you were able to get any kitchen tool for your classroom to get a blender, that's a great tool to have in your classroom. And then, when you're planning, kind of back to what Cielo was saying as well, like if you grow cilantro, say you grow cilantro and cherry tomatoes, you could make like a nice little guacamole too. If you'd have to obviously purchase the avocados, but it's just a really fun activity too for the kids to kind of tear up cilantro to help make the guacamole. And it's a really good activity, a fun activity for the students. So, kind of planning your gardens also with a goal in mind as well. Sometimes people do like themed gardens. So just thinking about that as an idea as well.
Yeah, Jeannie, thanks for that. I've definitely heard some creative, ideas for gardens, themed based, right? So like a salsa garden or a pizza garden, right? And you think through, well, what would go on a pizza or in salsa, and you do want to match it with the season and where you are in Florida in terms of the time to plant that. But that can then pull in all kinds of other fun things for artwork that would go with it and keep it focused. So I think there's a lot of creativity you can do with how you plant and what you plant. So with that, I would love to just open it up if anyone has any other questions. We do have a few minutes left in case anyone's got anything burning that they'd like to ask the group. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and staying on for our Q&A session. Our next one is going to be December, make sure I get the date right, December 2nd. So same time, we would love to have you for the next session, and you'll be receiving a follow-up email with the links that we've shared as well as the Google Drive. And if you haven't had a chance to give us feedback, we always appreciate that. And Kelly just dropped in the evaluation link again. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.